The room went silent the moment I placed the blue folder beside my mother's untouched glass of iced tea. 21 years of lies were sitting inside it, and every person at that family dinner knew I had not come there to apologize. My mother had just told everyone I walked out on the family when I was a child. My father said I was being greedy with my grandfather's estate. My twin brother sat across from me, pale, shaking, and staring at the table, like the truth was already crawling toward him. I kept my hand on the folder and said, "Before anyone asks me to sign anything, I think you should all see what they signed first." What I pulled out of that folder ended the family story my parents had been telling for 2 decades. But to understand why they looked so terrified, you have to go back to the summer they decided only one twin was worth keeping. My name is Nora Whitaker. I am 34 years old. I live outside Cedar Falls, Iowa, where I run a small animal rehabilitation clinic behind an old farmhouse with a red roof and too many rescued dogs. I fix broken wings, bottle feed orphaned raccoons, and spend most mornings cleaning mud off my boots before sunrise. People think working with injured animals makes you soft. It does not. It teaches you exactly what fear looks like when it has nowhere safe to go. And I knew that look because I had worn it myself when I was 11 years old, sitting on the edge of a bed that was no longer mine, listening to my parents explain why I had to leave. My twin brother Nolan was the smart one. That is not an insult. It is just the first sentence everyone in our family learned to say about us. Nolan could multiply 3-digit numbers in his head before we were 10. Nolan played chess against adults at the library. Nolan read science books for fun and corrected teachers without sounding rude. People called him brilliant. They called me sweet. In my parents' house, brilliant got tutors, competitions, private lessons, and a future. Sweet got asked to be quiet while brilliant studied. My mother, Elise Whitaker, had wanted to be a doctor before she had us. She said she gave up medical school for motherhood so often that it became part of the furniture in our house. Nolan became her proof that the sacrifice had been worth it. My father, Grant, owned a tax preparation office and treated life like a ledger. Every dollar needed a purpose, every child needed a return. One night when I was 10, I heard him talking to my mother through the laundry room vent. He said, "We cannot split everything down the middle just because they were born on the same day. Nolan has potential, Nora has a good heart, but good hearts do not pay tuition." I was lying on the floor with a picture book open in front of me. I remember putting my palm over my own chest as if I could protect that useless good heart from being counted and dismissed. The next summer, there was a suitcase by the front door. My suitcase. My mother told me I was going to stay with Aunt Ruth for a little while. She said it would be good for me. She said Nolan needed a quieter environment because he had been accepted into a special academic program, and the house had to be peaceful. I asked if I had done something wrong. My father said, "Do not make this harder than it has to be." Nolan was upstairs. He did not come down. I remember looking at the staircase until my eyes burned, waiting for my twin to appear and say there had been a mistake. He did not. Aunt Ruth arrived in her pickup truck just after dinner. My mother kissed my forehead quickly, the way you touch something hot and pull back. She told me to behave. My father carried my suitcase to the truck and told Ruth, "We appreciate this." Like she was taking a chair they no longer had room for. I watched our house through the back window as we drove away. The porch light stayed on. The kitchen curtains were open. I could see my mother clearing the table, my father putting Nolan's science trophy back in the center of the mantel. I thought I would come back in a few weeks. A child will believe almost anything if believing it means her parents still want her. But weeks became months, months became school years, and the little while became my entire childhood. Aunt Ruth lived an hour north on a small farm outside Waverly. She was my mother's older sister, but they had not been close for years. Ruth had no children, no husband, and no patience for people who used pretty words to cover ugly choices. The first night, she put clean sheets on the guest bed and said, "You can cry as loud as you need to. This house does not punish grief." I did not cry that night because I did not trust the offer. The next morning, she woke me before sunrise and took me to the barn. A baby fox had been found near the road, too weak to stand. Ruth wrapped it in a towel, warmed milk with a syringe, and showed me how to hold something fragile without squeezing the life out of it. That was the first useful thing anyone had ever taught me. Ruth became my home slowly. She did not ask me to be grateful. She did not call me lucky. She did not say my parents were doing their best. She just set a second plate at every meal and left the hallway light on until I stopped needing it. I wrote letters to my parents at first. I wrote to Nolan too. I told him about the farm, about the fox, about the old horse Ruth had rescued from a county auction. I asked if he missed me. No replies came. Then, 6 months after I left, one card arrived from my grandmother Hazel, my father's mother. Inside was $20 and a note that said, "I know where you are. I know you did not choose it. I love you." I read that card until the fold tore. After that, Hazel wrote every month, birthday cards, Christmas cards, newspaper clippings, little notes in blue ink. She never said my parents were wrong. She did not need to. Every envelope said it for her. For years, I thought those cards were all she could give me. I did not know she was saving something else. I did not know she had opened an account in both twins' names when we were babies. I did not know she had watched my parents drain my half to fund Nolan's schools. I did not know she had kept copies of every transfer. All I knew was that while my parents turned me into a story, my grandmother kept a record. I grew up. That sounds simple. It was not. I grew into a girl who did not ask for new shoes until the old ones split. I grew into a teenager who could splint a bird's wing, but still could not say the word abandoned without tasting metal. I grew into a woman who built a life without sending my parents a single update. Not when I graduated, not when Ruth helped me buy the small clinic, not when I got married to Daniel, a quiet county mechanic who could fix any engine and never once made me feel like a burden. Not when our daughter Lila was born, not when our son Ben came 3 years later. My parents did not know their grandchildren's names because I had learned not to offer pieces of my life to people who had already taught me what they did with what was mine. Hazel knew everything. She knew Lila loved frogs. She knew Ben called every animal Buddy. She knew Daniel made terrible pancakes and excellent coffee. Her last Christmas card said, "You build a real home, Nora. Not the kind made of walls, the kind made of people who stay." I kept that card in the top drawer of my desk. 3 months later, Hazel died. I got the call from her lawyer, not from my father, that told me everything before the woman on the phone even finished speaking. Her name was Clara Benton, and she had handled Hazel's affairs for almost 20 years. She asked me to come to her office in Des Moines. Her voice was careful, professional, and kind in a way that made me brace for pain. Hazel's funeral was small. My parents came late and left early. Nolan did not come at all. Aunt Ruth stood beside me with her hand tucked through my arm. My mother wore black pearls and cried beautifully for people watching. My father shook hands like he was networking at a memorial. After the service, Aunt Melanie, my mother's younger sister, drifted toward me with a paper cup of coffee and a smile that did not touch her eyes. "Your grandmother was always very fond of you," she said, almost strangely fond considering everything. I asked what she meant. She waved one hand. "Oh, you know, after you chose Ruth over everyone. Families remember things." I looked at her for a long moment and understood that the lie had traveled farther than I knew. In their version, I had chosen to leave. I had preferred the farm. I had rejected them. A child with no car, no money, no power, and a suitcase packed by her mother had apparently abandoned the family. I did not argue with Melanie at the funeral. I had learned that some rooms are not worth correcting. But 2 days later, when I sat across from Clara Benton and saw the gray document box on her desk, I realized Hazel had prepared for exactly this. Clara opened Hazel's will first. Hazel had left the majority of her estate to me, not billions, not television money, but enough to change the shape of my life. Her small house in Des Moines, savings from decades of careful living, and an investment account that made me sit back in the chair and stare at the numbers. To a rich person, it might have been comfortable. To a woman with a rescue clinic, 2 kids, a mortgage, and a husband who patched together old trucks to save money, it was oxygen. But Clara was not finished. She placed a sealed letter in front of me. Then she placed a second folder, blue, with my name written on the tab in Hazel's handwriting. "Your grandmother gave very specific instructions," Clara said. "She wanted you to read the letter alone. She also wanted you to have certified copies of everything in this folder before any family meeting." I asked, "Why would there be a family meeting?" Clara sighed the way lawyers sigh when families are predictable. "Because your parents have already called my office twice." I laughed once without humor. "Of course they have." Clara looked at me over her glasses. "They're asking questions about capacity, influence, fairness. They are not using the word contest yet, but they are walking toward it." Then she tapped the blue folder. "Your grandmother expected that." I drove home with Hazel's letter and the blue folder on the passenger seat. I waited until the kids were asleep and Daniel had taken the dogs out. Then I sat at the kitchen table where the only sound was the refrigerator humming and opened the letter. Hazel's handwriting was shaky, but I knew every curve of it. "My dearest Nora," it began. "If you are reading this, I have gone where the truth no longer needs courage. I am sorry I did not fight harder when you were small. I told myself your Aunt Ruth was safer than that house, and she was. But safety should not have had to come from being discarded. Your parents made choices and dressed them up as necessity. They will say they had no options. That is not true. They had options. They chose the one that cost them you." I pressed my hand over my mouth and kept reading. There was money for both of you. I opened the Whitaker Twin Education Trust when you and Nolan were babies. I put in what I could. Your great uncle added to it. There was enough to help both children. Your parents used your half for Nolan after they sent you away. They never asked. You were a minor. You could not consent. I kept the records because someday people who do wrong start telling the story as if it happened to them. I am leaving you what I can now because I cannot give you back what they took then. If they come for you, use the folder. If they leave you in peace, let peace be enough. Either way, remember this. You were not the spare child. They were the ones who could not count love correctly. I cried then. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just the kind of crying that makes your ribs hurt because it is 20 years late. Daniel came in quietly, saw the letter in my hand, and sat beside me without asking questions. I opened the blue folder. Inside were bank statements, trust documents, notarized forms, and one page that made the room tilt. It was a voluntary guardianship transfer signed by both my parents when I was 11. It gave Ruth legal custody of me indefinitely, not temporary, not for a summer, not until the gifted program ended, indefinitely. In the box labeled reason, my father had written, "Parents unable to provide equal educational and developmental resources for both minors." Equal resources, both minors. I had been reduced to a resource problem in my father's handwriting. Under that were statements from the Education Trust. Deposits made for years in both names. Then, the year after I was sent away, withdrawals. Nolan's private school, Nolan's academic camps, Nolan's college tuition, Nolan's apartment near campus. My half drained until nothing remained. I stared at the pages for a long time. I thought about the scholarships I had lost because I needed to work, the loans, the nights Daniel and I ate rice and eggs while I kept the clinic open. The way I told myself struggle made me strong because the alternative was admitting someone had stolen the softer path from me. There had been money, there had been a plan, there had been a future with my name on it. My parents had not simply abandoned me. They had used me on the way out. The first call came the next afternoon. My mother. I recognized the number even though I deleted the contact years ago. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then answered. "Nora," she said, warm as melted butter. "Honey, it is Mom." Honey. She had not called me honey since the night she sent me away. "What do you want?" I asked. A small pause, then a soft laugh. "Still direct? I suppose that farm life did that to you." I said nothing. Silence has a way of making false warmth show it seems. She continued. "Your father and I have been thinking. Hazel's passing has reminded us how short life is. Whatever happened years ago, we would love to heal, as a family." There it was, heal. The word people use when they want the injured person to do the repair. She invited me to a family dinner at a private room in Cedar Falls. My town, not theirs. She said Nolan would be there, Aunt Melanie, cousins, a fresh start, she called it. I asked, "Why now?" Her voice sweetened. "Because family should not be divided over money." Money. She had reached the truth faster than I expected. I told her I would think about it. Then I called Clara. Clara listened, then said, "Do not sign anything. Do not agree to anything verbally. Do not let them turn dinner into mediation without your attorney present." "You think they will try?" "I think they already have," she said. "Your father's attorney asked whether you would consider a voluntary redistribution to avoid litigation." I laughed again, that same dry sound. "They want me to give Nolan part of Hazel's estate before the will settles." "Yes," Clara said. "And if they can get you to sign something before the documents in that folder become part of any formal dispute, they control the story." That sentence stayed with me. They control the story. They had controlled it for 21 years. Nora chose to leave. Nora preferred Ruth. Nora was difficult. Nora turned her back, but the folder said otherwise. The folder said my parents signed me away, spent my money, and then taught the family to blame me for disappearing. 2 days before the dinner, Nolan texted me. I almost ignored it. Then I read it. "Can we meet before Saturday? Just us, please." The word please stopped me. Nolan and I met in a diner halfway between our towns. I knew his face because it was a sharper version of mine, but the man who walked in did not look like the golden child from my memories. He looked exhausted, thin, the confidence had been scraped off him. He sat across from me and wrapped both hands around his coffee. "I did not know what they did," he said before I could speak. That was not what I expected. "What did they tell you?" I asked. His eyes dropped. "That you wanted to live with Aunt Ruth, that you hated the pressure in our house, that you did not want to come home." My throat tightened. I was 11. "I know," he whispered. "I know that now." He told me his life had not become the miracle my parents ordered. He had gone to the elite schools, the university, the research program, the startup. For years, my parents displayed him like a trophy. Then his company failed, his marriage collapsed, and he moved back into my parents' basement with debt and panic attacks he called insomnia because our father did not believe in anxiety. "They keep saying Hazel's money should help me start over," Nolan said. "They say you owe it to the family." I asked, "What do you say?" He looked up then, and for the first time in my life, I saw my twin as a person who had also been trapped in the math. Different side of the equation, same cold ledger. "I say I do not know how to carry one more thing they stole from you." I did not forgive him in that diner. Forgiveness is not a coupon you hand out because someone finally says the right sentence, but I believed he had not known. That mattered. "At dinner," I said, "they are going to lie." He nodded. "I know." "I am bringing proof." His hands tightened around the cup. "Good," he said. Not loud, not dramatic, just good. The night before the dinner, my father called. His voice was the same as I remembered from childhood, flat, practical, a man speaking to an expense. "Nora, tomorrow needs to go smoothly." "Does it? Your brother is in trouble, your grandmother made an emotional decision. You have a chance to be reasonable." I looked at the blue folder on my kitchen table. Reasonable meaning I signed something. He did not deny it. "You have a stable life. Nolan has greater needs and greater potential. Some investments take longer to recover." There it was, the old math, still alive, still wearing a clean shirt. "You still talk about us like accounts," I said. "Do not be dramatic. We had to make hard choices. We could only invest in one future then. We are asking you to invest in the family now." I let the silence stretch, then I said, "I heard you." "Good," he said, misunderstanding completely. "We will see you tomorrow." I hung up and wrote down his exact words. We could only invest in one future then. We are asking you to invest in the family now. I placed that note in the folder behind the guardianship form. The next morning, a message appeared in a new family group chat my mother had added me to. It was clearly meant for my father, but she sent it to everyone. "Be gentle with Nora at dinner. Once she signs the redistribution agreement, we can stop Claire from making the old records an issue. Keep Nolan emotional. It will help." I stared at it. Then I screenshotted it. 30 seconds later, the message disappeared. Then my mother wrote, "Wrong chat. Sorry everyone, long morning?" But 20 relatives had already seen it, and I had saved it. I sat in my truck outside the clinic and felt a calm so deep it scared me. They had given me motive, timing, and strategy in one message. Hazel had built me a shield. My mother had just sharpened it. The dinner was at Rosewood House, the nicest restaurant in Cedar Falls, in a private room with cream walls, heavy curtains, and a long table set for 14. My mother was already there when I arrived, wearing navy silk and the expression of a woman hosting a reconciliation she had rehearsed in the mirror. My father sat beside her, broad hands folded near a leather portfolio. Aunt Melanie watched me with bright little eyes. Cousins avoided direct eye contact. Nolan sat at the far end, too thin in a gray jacket, looking like a man waiting for surgery. My mother stood when she saw me. "Nora," she said, crossing the room. "You came." She hugged me before I could step back. Her perfume was the same as the night she sent me away. I let my arms hang at my sides until she released me. She pretended not to notice. Dinner began politely. Soup, bread, salad. My mother told the table how grateful she was that old wounds could finally be healed. My father talked about Hazel's generosity. Aunt Melanie said families should not let money divide them. No one mentioned the group chat. No one mentioned the deleted message. They were all waiting for the performance to become pressure. Over the main course, my mother placed her hand over her heart. "I do not want to make this uncomfortable," she said, which meant she absolutely did. "But your grandmother was not herself near the end. She was lonely, vulnerable, and Nora, you were nearby. Perhaps she leaned too heavily on one version of the past." I looked at her. "One version?" She sighed sadly for the room. "You left us, sweetheart. You chose Ruth. We tried to bring you home. You refused, and Nolan stayed. Nolan carried the family hopes. He is struggling now, and Hazel's estate should help the family equally, not reward the child who walked away." The table went quiet. A cousin looked down. Aunt Melanie nodded as though this tragedy had always burdened her personally. My father opened his leather portfolio and pulled out a document. "This is a simple agreement," he said. "No lawyers necessary. You sign tonight and we move forward." I looked at the paper, then I looked at my mother's glass of iced tea. Then I picked up my blue folder from the chair beside me and placed it next to her glass. The sound was soft. Somehow it stopped the room. "You're right," I said. "This family does need one version of the past." My mother's smile thinned. "Nora, this is not the time for dramatics." "Good," I said. "Then I will stick to documents." I opened the folder and took out the voluntary guardianship transfer. This is a notarized guardianship document signed by both of my parents when I was 11. It gave Aunt Ruth legal custody of me indefinitely. I slid it into the center of the table. It does not say I chose to leave. It does not say I refused to come home. It says my parents transferred custody. My father's face went stiff. My mother whispered, "That is private." I looked at her. "So was abandoning a child, but you made a public story out of it." A cousin reached for the document. I let him. He read the reason line first because I had highlighted it. His eyebrows moved. He passed it to the next person. I read it aloud so no one could pretend not to know. Parents unable to provide equal educational and developmental resources for both minors. The words hung over the table like smoke. I was not difficult. I did not choose to leave. My parents signed me away because they decided my brother was the better investment. My father's jaw worked. "That is a cruel interpretation." "It is your handwriting," I said. Then I took out the trust statements. "This is the Whitaker Twin Education Trust, opened for both children, funded by Hazel and other relatives. These pages show deposits made for both of us. These pages show withdrawals after I was sent away. Nolan's school, Nolan's camps, Nolan's tuition, Nolan's housing. My share was emptied before I turned 18. Aunt Melanie said, "Are you accusing your parents of theft?" I looked at her. "I am showing the table records." My mother's face flushed. "We did what we had to do. Nolan had opportunities." "And I had a name on the account," I said. "You did not just send me away. You spent the future Hazel tried to leave me." The room was silent. That was when my father made the mistake that finished everything. He leaned forward, angry now, and said, "Because Nolan was the one with a future worth funding. We made a hard choice. Any parent with sense would have done the same." My mother hissed, "Grant, too late." Every relative at that table had heard him. Nolan closed his eyes. I turned the next page. "And this is the message Mom accidentally sent this morning." I read it aloud. "Be gentle with Nora at dinner. Once she signs the redistribution agreement, we can stop Claire from making the old records an issue. Keep Nolan emotional. It will help." I looked around the table. This dinner was not reconciliation. It was a strategy meeting with food. A chair creaked. Someone muttered, "Good Lord." Aunt Melanie looked at my mother. "Elise, is that real?" My mother said nothing. Silence is answer enough when the screenshot has a timestamp. Then Nolan stood. His hands were shaking, but his voice held. "I need to say something." My father snapped, "Sit down." Nolan did not sit. No. I have spent my whole life sitting when you told me to. The room turned to him. He looked at me first. "When we were kids, they told me Nora chose to leave. They told me she liked Ruth better. They told me she did not want to be part of our family. I believed them because I was 11 and they were our parents." His voice cracked. "I thought my twin abandoned me. I hated her for it. and all this time, she was the one they sent away. My mother began crying, not soft tears, angry ones. "We gave you everything," she said to Nolan. "Everything. Do not stand there and shame us after everything we sacrificed." Nolan looked at her, and something in his face broke open. "You did not give me everything. You gave me her half too." No one moved. That sentence landed harder than any document I brought. My mother stood so quickly her chair hit the wall behind her. "I gave up my life for you children," she shouted. "I had dreams, I had medical school, I had a future, and I gave it all up. Someone had to become what I could not become." "So you chose Nolan?" I said softly, "and erased me because I reminded you what the choice cost." She looked at me with pure hatred then, the kind that comes from being understood too clearly. "You were always so ordinary," she spat. "You think being kind to broken animals makes you special?" The room recoiled. There she was, not the grieving mother, not the wronged parent, just the woman who had looked at her daughter and seen no return on investment. I closed the folder slowly. "No," I said. "I think being kind to broken things kept me from becoming you." My father said nothing. He had gone gray around the mouth. Aunt Melanie stared at her sister as if seeing her without makeup for the first time. Nolan sat down heavily, one hand over his eyes. I gathered the papers one by one. "I am not signing your agreement. Hazel's will stands. Clara has the originals. If you contest it, the guardianship transfer, the trust records, and the message from this morning become part of the answer." I looked at my father. "And the education trust is separate. My attorney will decide what to do with that properly. Not at dinner, not under pressure, not with your pen." I turned to the rest of the table. "Most of you were told a story for 21 years. I do not blame you for believing people who looked convincing, but tonight you have seen what they signed, what they spent, and what they planned. What you do with that is yours." Then I looked at my mother. "You spent half my life controlling what people believed about me. Tonight, the paperwork spoke louder than you." I stood to leave. Nolan rose too. For a second, I thought he might ask me for help. Money, rescue, a place to stay. But he did not. He walked around the table and stopped in front of me. "I'm sorry," he said. "Not for being 11, for staying comfortable with the lie after I was old enough to question it." That apology mattered because it didn't ask me to fix him. I reached into my bag and handed him Clara's card. "She knows people who can help you get out from under them. Call her if you want help standing on your own. Not as a bank, not as another investment, as a person." He took the card like it weighed more than paper. "Can I call you someday?" he asked. "Someday," I said. "When you are calling as my brother, not as their messenger." I walked out of Rosewood House alone. Outside, the air was cold and clean, and for a moment I stood under the parking lot light with the blue folder against my chest. I thought I would feel victorious. I did not. I felt free, which is quieter and much larger. Hazel's estate settled the following Tuesday. My parents' attorney withdrew the threat to contest after Clara sent copies of the records. There was no lawsuit over the will. The education trust became a separate legal matter, handled slowly and carefully, the way real justice often is. I do not know yet how it will end, but I know this. They no longer get to pretend it never happened. The family changed after that dinner. Some relatives apologized, some vanished. Aunt Melanie sent a card that said, "I should have asked more questions." My mother posted a long message online about ungrateful children and the pain of motherhood. Almost no one responded. It turns out public sympathy is harder to manage when the public has seen the paperwork. A month later, I received a certified letter from my parents' lawyer informing me I had been removed from their will. I read it at the mailbox while one of the clinic dogs chased leaves in the driveway. I expected pain. Instead, I laughed. They had cut me out of something I had stopped trying to enter. A family that only knows how to measure love had finally announced I no longer had an account there. I signed the acknowledgement and mailed it back the same day. Ruth made chicken soup that night, even though I told her I was fine. "I know," she said. "Soup is not only for emergencies." Nolan called 6 months later, not for money. He had moved out of my parents' basement and taken a teaching job in Minnesota. He was in therapy. He said he had started telling people he had a sister, not a missing twin. We talked for 20 minutes. It was awkward, gentle, real enough to try again. I do not know if we will ever be what twins are supposed to be. but I know we are no longer two children trapped inside our parents' story. Hazel's house is rented now to a young couple with a baby and a loud beagle. I used part of her savings to expand the clinic. There is a new recovery room with heated floors for injured animals. On the wall near the door, I framed Hazel's last card. You built a real home, not the kind made of walls, the kind made of people who stay. Every time I pass it, I think about the girl in the pickup truck watching her porch light disappear. I wish I could tell her this. They did not send you away because you were not worth keeping. They sent you away because they were too small to hold two futures at once. That was their failure, not your value. Here is what 21 years, one blue folder, and one dinner table taught me. Family is not the people who calculate whether you are worth the cost. Family is the people who never put your name in the expense column. If someone made you feel like the spare child, the backup plan, the ordinary one, the one they could manage without, I hope you hear me clearly. You were never less. You were just standing in front of people who only understood numbers and called that love. You do not have to shout the truth to make it powerful. Sometimes you only have to place the folder on the table and let the signature speak.